Hey everyone, Kim Camellia here. I sent Casey Rain down to London on his own to interview Ingrid Chavez for the newest episode of Uncovering Prince because I was working. Enjoy!
Hi everyone, my name's Casey Rain from The Violet Reality, and we are back for another episode of your favorite show, Uncovering Prince. And today we are here with the one and only Ingrid Chavez. How are you doing, Ingrid?
I'm good, thank you.
It's lovely to be here with you. Thank you for coming.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. So the way we usually do these interviews is we try and go a little bit chronologically. So I think the place to start is, since most Prince fans know you from your work with Lovesexy and Graffiti Bridge, tell us how you met Prince.
Well, I was living in Minneapolis, and I would go to different clubs every once in a while, and there was a club at the time called Williams Pub that on Tuesday nights had funk night. So it's obviously where we would all go to dance on Tuesday nights. So one Tuesday night I went, and I was alone, and Prince walked in, and he sat in a booth not too far from the bar, and I went and sat at the bar, and he kept looking at me, and there was just something sad about, in his eyes that night. So I sent him a note, and the note said, "Hi, remember me? Probably not, but that's okay because we've never met. Smile, I love it when you smile." And I had someone give it to him, and he invited me over to sit with him. And that was back in the days when he would wear the mirror hearts on his wrist. And he took it off his wrist and he gave it to me and put it on mine. And he asked me what my name was. And I said, Gertrude. And he said, and I asked him what his name was. And he said that his name was Dexter. And that's pretty much who we were to each other during the time that we spent with each other, writing and hanging out and stuff. And later that night, he asked me, well, not that, it wasn't much time that had passed anyway, and he asked me if I wanted to take a drive to Paisley Park. And that's when Paisley Park had just opened, so I said yes. And we went out there. We drove, I think maybe Gilbert was driving, and he sat in the back seat, and I sat in the front seat, and he asked me to pull the visor down so that he could see me through the mirror. And so that's the way we rode to Paisley Park. And we got there, and he asked, I think it's Studio C, where they have the Purple Rain display now. Mm-hmm. It was always in kind of an empty sound room, and he asked me to sit in there for, he just asked me to stay in there, and he would be back. And a while later he came back, and he asked me to come out and meet Susan Rogers. And I met her, and then he drove me home. And that was the first time I ever met him, so it was an interesting, strange evening, but I was game.
When you met Prince, this was around the time that he had been recording the Black Album, and ultimately he had visions or something telling him that he shouldn't release that album, and so he shelved it and started working on Lovesexy. What are your recollections of that?
I wasn't really aware of the Black Album. I didn't follow him that way. So all I know is what I heard, because we never had a conversation about it. So I know just what people who've shared information about it. I don't have any firsthand information or knowledge of it.
How much were you aware of the work that Prince had been doing on Graffiti Bridge before he offered you the role in the film?
After Lovesexy, he went on tour. We lost touch with each other. I went on and formed another band called Skyfish. And so I didn't have any communication with him. I just went back into what I do, which was make music. And one day when I was standing, you know where Ice House is now? Mm-hmm. And so I used to, and I just realized this when I went to see St. Paul play there, Paul Peterson play. And I realized that the Ice House is where I used to live. It used to be a barber shop in the little restaurant on the corner. I lived above what used to be the barber shop, so it's still connected to the Ice House.
Wow.
And so From there, back before they put the big apartment building on the corner, you used to be able to see this place called the Artist Quarters, and it was like a blues jazz bar, funky little place, and it was just a parking lot. So from my rooftop, you could see the Artist Quarters. And so one day I was standing on the roof, and I saw Prince's car there, and because I saw his brother Dwayne standing outside of it, so I knew Prince was there. So I had just finished this demo for the Skyfish Band, and I went down and gave it to Dwayne and with a note, and I just went back to my apartment, and a couple of days later, I got a call from Prince, and he asked me if I wanted to finish the poetry album, which we had started before. So there's this time between us making the poetry album and the movie and the finishing of the poetry album. But so what happened was we started working on the poetry album. We started making videos, and Craig Rice shot the first video, Heaven Must Be Near. And so when they went to start looking for a lead for the role of Aura, that's when Craig told Prince, he was like, you have Aura here. Like, why are you looking anywhere else? So, so this is space between us beginning the work on the poetry album and the movie, and I don't really know, what was going on as far as the music for the film. I just know that in my memory, they were happening at the same time. This making of this poetry record and he was looking for, the lead for his film. So
some of the other girls that were around at Paisley Park at that time were people that we've talked to and become friends with, and that's people like Anna Fantastic and Elisa Fiorillo. And I know that you're actually credited for backing vocals on one of Elisa's tracks that came out, a track called Playgirl. But Anna told us that Prince kind of kept everyone apart and the girls didn't really know each other. Was that your kind of recollection of things as well?
Yeah, he didn't like anybody hanging out with each other, especially like during that period of Lovesexy. He was very clear he didn't really want me hanging out with Kat, and I never got to know Sheila E. or any of those people. So I still have never met Sheila E. Yeah, so that was how he kept it.
You saying that you never met Sheila, there's a track that you were thought to be involved with and that was a live recording, which was Lovesexy, but not Lovesexy that came out on the record, a different track that was also called Lovesexy and cut a few days before. But nobody really knows anything about it, but you and Sheila and a bunch of other people are credited in a band environment. So I guess that can't be true if you never met her. So,
not in a band environment. I mean, maybe he had me record
spliced
something,
in. So Graffiti Bridge is really adored by a lot of Prince fans, but it wasn't a movie that did well at the box office. And for me, when I watch it, it's kind of like there's two different movies happening. You've got the story of Aura and the kid, and then you've got the kid versus the time, like the Purple Rain kind of sequel. And it feels like just two different movies, really. Do you think that was just down to like the way it was edited, or was what came out really what you thought when you were filming it, or did it turn into something different?
I think that I think a lot of it came down to editing, and Prince kind of just goes with things. I think that Craig had mentioned that Prince was changing the script along the way and wasn't sticking with what they originally had decided this film was going to be about. And so I think it came down to editing and Prince changing his mind about things, and also I think maybe even some Warner Brothers having some kind of input on like what they thought was going to make a good film or not. So I think people didn't understand where he was going with it while he was making it, and that might have influenced maybe the confusion of how it turned out.
Right. I don't know if you've seen, but there's floating around the internet, there's actually a bunch of deleted scenes that didn't make it into the cut. There's the whole alternate intro with Can't Stop This Feeling I Got, where he's like dancing around the club, and then there's the scene, the hangman scene with the noose and all that kind of stuff, which seems like it's kind of a important scene to not put in the movie. It kind of changes the whole dynamic of the movie. what's your recollection of that scene in particular and where it was supposed to sit in the wider storyline? And
Yeah, well, it was like we're hanging out in his bedroom. It's the night after, he's taken me from Morris Day. It's the night scene and everything, and I'm still in the dress. So it was like after the scene where we're talking about the I see his sheet music and stuff, and I think it was supposed to kind of come out of that part of the film. But I just remember, even when I was doing it, it just felt so like dark and intense, for the kind of film that he was making.
Because a lot of the rest of it is more bright and colorful.
And suddenly, like, he's getting hung.
I mean, that's kind of what I mean. It's like two movies. There's two different things happening. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah. When you were filming it, there's obviously not just Prince, but so many great people around the time, and Jimmy Jam and Terry Lewis and George Clinton, Mavis Staples and Tevin Campbell. Any of them that you got along with particularly well while you were filming that you have really strong memories of spending time with?
The guys from the time. Yeah, they were so fun. And I didn't hang out with any of the women. Well, obviously he doesn't. I just kept to myself and in that sense. But I hung out with the time. They were so funny, and we still joke about things whenever I run into them. That there's this one, and all of the guys from the time remember this, and it's a memory that they all come back. Like, remember that day? As we were on the set, and I guess I climbed up to the rafters, to the very, very top of the sound stage, and I was just watching, and suddenly all the guys from the time, I guess they were doing a scene or something, they all looked up and they were like, "Is that Ingrid up there?" And to this day, whenever I see any of them, like the other day I just saw Jerome. He's like, "And that day we were on the set and we looked up and you were up there." I saw Morris. That was the only thing he remember. It's like, and then that day they're just, and Jesse, that's his biggest memory. So, but we had fun. They were just funny, and they really were some comic relief for me. It was, I had never acted. I was nervous about it. There was one scene that they tried forever to shoot, and it's not that I have like bad feet or anything, but it's just like, for some reason, them like doing this close up on my feet coming over the bridge. I just had a meltdown. I was like, "No, this is wrong. You can't do this." And and Prince was so sweet about it. He was like, "Fine, okay, we won't do that then." But but I was just so like terribly insecure. But when I look back on it now, I pushed through, and you don't necessarily see that in the character. So, but it's the one and only time I've ever acted. What can I say?
There was, I don't know if you remember this, circa, I think post Graffiti Bridge, right afterwards, or around that time, not sure exactly when it was. There's this video that had been probably lost in the depths of time, but has recently surfaced on the internet, and it's you and Eric Leeds basically giving a Canadian film crew a tour around Paisley Park. And it kind of seems like Prince was just like, "Oh, there's a crew coming, you go and show them around." Is that what happened?
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like, it just seems like the least prepared like tour. It was like, "Oh, now we're going to go in here. This is what this is."
I know, when I see myself, I'm like, oh, it's hilarious.
I take it he didn't really ever give people much of a heads up on stuff like that.
Didn't.
It's all good. It's sweet.
It is, yeah. It's just part of Paisley Park history that is out there that you only get to see it in that, So.
While we're on the clearing up rumors section, there's one artist that was on Paisley Park that I really love his record, and nobody really talks too much about it. And it's around the same time that you were there, and that's Toni Lamont. Am I saying his name right? Toni Lamont. So. Were you around for the recording of his album? Because there was this whole thing where it seemed like Prince was going to be involved in the record, and then he ultimately wasn't. And do you know anything about what went down with them? So I know Toni passed away, and so we've never heard his side of the story.
Well, Toni, I was there for all of that recording. Toni and I became really close friends, and we were actually like boyfriend and girlfriend for a short period of time, and I think that that probably was a lot of the reason why his record got dropped, to be honest.
Prince wasn't happy about it.
But it wasn't like Prince was involved with my life at the time, so it was, he's just that way, though. He just doesn't want, just wants to keep everybody separated. And that was just an interesting period in time, being there. We would all hang out, and we would go to the studio late at night and, do background vocals or whatever on his record. And he was a really sweet person.
And was Lenny around at that time? Because I know he and Toni at one point were in a band together, and not much is really known about that. But was that around the same time as well? Yeah. Right, it's the whole Romeo Blue thing. Yeah. And there was some rumor at some point that Prince wanted Toni and Lenny to be in some kind of movie that he was doing. Did you ever hear anything about that? While we're on the subject of Lenny, what really happened with Justify My Love?
Yeah. Well, so I'll tell you how I met Lenny. So we were filming Graffiti Bridge, and one day after finishing up work that day, Prince asked me if I wanted to go see Lenny play at First Avenue. So we drove, and he had a limo drive us to First Avenue, and we're just there hanging out, and it's halfway through Lenny's set, and Prince is like, "Yeah, I'm bored, let's go." And I was like, so we get in the limo, we drive all the way back to Chanhassen, and he tells the limo driver, "Okay, take her home," which I lived in Minneapolis, so it's just like,
what's the point of that?
I know.
You drove me back.
I was like, "Can you take me back to First Avenue?" So he took me back to First Avenue, and I went backstage, and I never met Lenny, but I was friends with Toni, and I knew that him and Lenny were friends, so I just went backstage and just talked to Lenny and told him, I'm a friend of Toni's. And so we became friends, and when I would go out to LA to pick up some of the shots for the movie, I would hang out with Lenny. And one time, him and Andre Betts were in the studio, and they invited me, and so they were laying down the beat, and then he laid down the strings, I think. And then he asked me if I had anything that I wanted to maybe record, and I had a letter on me. So I just went in there, and it was just one take, just reading what I had. And we finished up that. They mixed it, and they gave me a copy of it. And Craig Rice and T.C. Ellis, they happened to be in L.A. at the time, working on the film as well. So both of them heard the original version, that I had, because I hung out with Craig. I was like, "You gotta listen to this," and then I hung out with TZ, and gotta hear this. And then a couple of days later, Lenny invited me to go to Virgin to talk to the head of Virgin and let them hear this song. And the head of Virgin immediately must have heard that this was a song Madonna should do, because he was like, "Oh, I really like this song. Can I hold on to your cassette? Can I have a copy?" I was like, "Oh yeah, sure," thinking I would get another copy. And when I actually tried to contact the studio and contact people about getting another copy, it was like shut down. Wow. Pretty much. And so I didn't really hear anything about it. And then the night of the premiere of Graffiti Bridge, Lenny came. He didn't go to the premiere, but he knew that I was there and had someone come and have me come out to his car. And that's when he told me basically that Madonna was going to do it. And that, and unfortunately, he talked me into not taking credit for it, because I don't believe it was him, but it was the record label. Just wanted it to seem like it was Madonna's new song, and that this was her new sound and everything, and they didn't really want it to be someone else having written it. And so I didn't have a lawyer, I didn't have management at the time, so I just felt a little bit cornered about the whole deal. But so the song comes out. I haven't told anyone, because I've kept my end of the bargain. I've signed a non-disclosure thing. And Prince calls me, and he says, "Ingrid, what's up with that Madonna song, Justify My Love? I know that's you. I can hear it, you know? And so that was the first day I ever told anybody, besides the, few people who knew, that I had written that song. And he was upset. He was like, now people are going to think that you're copying her because your record's coming out after that. And so that was when I hired a lawyer, and we got credit. And that was back in the MTV days when they were like, and Madonna said this, and Lenny said that, and Cooper said this, and it was just like all like news bulletin, and it was horrible. It was a really tough period in my life because I didn't like it, and I didn't like being in that position, and I didn't like being talked about like that in public. And so we settled out of court. I probably could have gotten more, but I just didn't want to do it anymore.
Yeah.
It didn't feel good.
It's a real shame because you had that situation with that song, and then there was a slightly different situation that you had with Do Anything, where you didn't end up being on the record, even though that was like also a record.
Yeah, that was Prince though. He didn't want me on that.
Oh, really?
Yeah. They made a deal where they were like that I would get my publishing and I'd get credit for having written part of it, but Paisley Park didn't want me on that record.
Why? Like, why? Did he ever say why?
No, just okay. So,
did he feel like it sounded like him? Because a lot of people over the years were like, "Oh, maybe he secretly wrote it." And there's a lot of songs they say that about, but that's.
I don't think it's that. I think that we'd already sort of moved forward, and me working with him and doing this record. And another thing that's interesting about Prince is that the Skyfish cassette, we had already put together this cassette. It was in Electric Fetus, and it was in all the little record stores around Minneapolis under the name of Skyfish. When Prince called me and asked me if I wanted to work with him on finish the poetry album, that's when he called me and he said, Ingrid, I want you to hear this. I want you to hear Heaven Must Be Near. It sounds like Springtime in Paris. Interestingly enough, every Skyfish cassette disappeared from all the stores. They just disappeared. He had someone go and buy up every one of them. He disappeared it, ghosted it. So, but that's who he is, And it's funny because there's these Skyfish bootlegs floating around, and
someone's got them.
Yeah, there's these diehard fans that'll say I have a Skyfish. I'm like,
wow.
Oh, cool.
That is cool. With your record that you did on Paisley Park, one thing that I've always thought was really interesting is the fact that half of the songs or so that you originally recorded with Prince, Michael Koppelman, the engineer, ended up remixing and playing everything on him. And that's kind of out of character for an engineer and somebody working at Paisley Park in that capacity to end up, producing and composing half the record, especially songs that started out that Prince was playing everything on. Do you have any recollection of when he first heard something that Michael had composed, whether that was something with you or just something that he'd done outside of that, and sort of signed off on that, on him remixing those tracks?
I don't know. I think that Prince just liked Michael. He liked him, and when he was thinking of how to flesh out this record, he was thinking who, and so Levi and Michael were, those were the two that he felt would have the sensibility to, keep the vision of. So when we first made the record, you may know, it was just me, Prince and I in the studio, him doing synthesizer and me just on, reading my poems. So the poems and the initial inspiration and the bed of sounds were already there. So I think, he's all over that record, obviously, but, when he's thinking if I'm not going to do the entire record, who has that sensibility to, keep the poetry and the charm and that spiritual, the innocence of that record, how to keep that. And I guess he would just really like Michael. And he also, which was really unique to him too, he sent me and Michael to LA to record in the studio.
Right.
So we recorded Little Mama and Hippie Blood literally in 2 sessions. We went in not knowing what we were going to do. We were like, okay, we got 2 days. What are we going to do? We started one of them from scratch. Just really, here's a beat. What are you going to do with that? I don't know. Let's do this little melody here. Finished both songs in 2 days. And so, so that kind of created a friendship and a working relationship between me and Michael that, really helped to. So, yeah, I really enjoyed working with Michael, though. It was a really natural relationship.
One thing that's been talked about is that Prince's vision for the record that he was doing for you is that he wanted it all to be the kind of the spoken word stuff and then not be any singing on it, and Warners were not happy about that and said, no, you have to have something that we can release commercially. That is that your recollection?
Yeah, it is. He really didn't. He really just wanted to keep it just solely a spoken word album. But I think he also knew that I liked to sing, so it wasn't just Warner Brothers. I think he was like, okay, well, here's some space on the record for you to go and do what you do from, with your singing and your spoken word and he had heard stuff that I had done, so he knew that, like the first thing that I ever did when he put me in Studio B, when he first met me, where Across the Line was first recorded, that had singing on it. So Across the Line, there's a song called Reason Enough that it's kind of heavy and dark, but it was singing. So he knew that I naturally like to sing.
Prince Vault, I don't know if you've ever seen it, the website. It has a listing for a song that allegedly was done by you and Prince much later on in 91 in LA called Simp the Pimp. True?
There is a song in there called Simp the Pimp, which is about Lenny Kravitz. To be honest, I was not happy when all that stuff was going down. So
right.
So but it wasn't with Prince. I can't really remember who I did that with. I don't remember who I went in the studio with, to be honest with you. I'd love to, but it says Prince and Ingrid.
Yeah, that's what
I love it.
The website says. So There we go.
Okay, it was me and Prince. I wish I could remember because I don't, There's another song. I wonder if it's on there. Iggy Town? Is Iggy Town on there?
I don't think there's anything mention of that one on there. What's it called?
Iggy Town.
Iggy Town.
Yeah, Iggy Town.
Okay. And that's you and Prince?
Yeah. No, it's not me and Prince.
But the same kind of session with Levi or other people, whoever was around at that time.
Yeah.
A Prince-related session.
I know that whenever anyone went into the studio with me, it was always an interesting session because, like, the first time I went into the studio, it was, okay, so I need you to flip all these tapes because I want the vocals to go backwards and I want the guitars to go backwards, and then we're going to flip it again. I'm going to sing with that. And then we're going to, so any of the sessions that anybody did with me were going to be an experience.
Maybe the estate will come calling and be like, we found these backwards tapes. What's up with that?
So tell us about your new record, and I know you have a show here in London tomorrow. Why did you decide to come back here to launch this, and what's the vibe of your new record like for anyone that's going to be checking it out? Yeah,
so the new album's called Memories of Flying, and it took about 4 years to make, and it's the first record probably since, if I think about records that I've done that had more than one co-writer or producer, I'd have to go back to the May 1992 record. So, but it's the first record in the past 3 or 4 records that isn't just me and one collaborator. So it has multiple collaborators. Has Mashti Project from Denmark and Ganga from Denmark and Charles Webster from London and David Hearn from London and Peter Moosbrink of Deep Dive Corporation from Germany. So it has kind of a European feel to it just because there's all this different artists out of Europe. And then my bandmate, Marco Valentin from Black Eskimo, he's all over the record. But I was thinking I'd make a second Black Eskimo record, and it just never did come to fruition. So I just focused on this record, and it's got my chill vibe, to it. It's also it's a bit more reflective, like self-reflective than I think Black Eskimo was, and introspective. It feels like it goes from light to dark and dealing with just finding that place where you can self-heal, going inside and finding the answers. And also there's a lot of positivity towards people around me that were, in bad relationships or in need of just some support and love. And there's one song, All the Love in the World, that I think is a really good positive message for everybody out there. And our new single is Snowblind, which was written with Marco Valentin. And that's one tomorrow night that if you come will be a totally different version, but I love it. We just have slowed it down and made this really amazing, slow, acoustic version almost of it. So it's fun to take the songs and put them in a live performance and get to switch them up and change them and change the vibe. And so you'll get to see that tomorrow.
Sure. Awesome. And just to wrap up, what's the number one thing that you learned working with Prince that you still carry with you to this day?
Well, he gave me a sense of confidence that he helped me find my voice. Like, when I went to him, I was a musician. I did this and I did that, but he was like, yeah, but your speaking voice is what's special about you. And that's something that I did spoken word before him, but he helped me to realize that was something unique to me that, to always keep in my music and on my work. So,
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, Ingrid. I hope you have a great time here in London and traveling around Europe and anywhere else that you're headed next.
Thank you. And finally, because last time we had a hard time hooking up, but we got it.
Good. We got there in the end.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, St. Paul here. Make sure you go subscribe to The Violet Reality, the funkiest channel on YouTube.